David Torres stared at the crumpled $10 bill in his wallet. His last $10. The number seemed to mock him. Too small to matter, too precious to spend carelessly. The line at Moonbeam Cafe moved slowly, giving him too much time to think. Behind him, someone sighed impatiently. In front of him, a woman in an expensive gray coat fumbled with her phone, clearly frustrated. It had been exactly 21 days since David lost his job at Morrison Tech, 21 days of sending resumes into the void. 21 days of watching his savings evaporate. 21 days of lying to his daughter Sophie about why they were eating pasta for the 4th night in a row. "I'm so sorry," the woman ahead said to the cashier, her voice tight with embarrassment. "Could you try it again? Maybe I entered the PIN wrong." The card reader beeped. David watched her shoulders tense. He recognized that particular brand of panic. He'd felt it himself 3 days ago at the grocery store when his own card failed. The cashier, a teenager with blue hair and too much patience, tried again. "I don't understand," the woman muttered, more to herself than anyone. "I had funds transferred this morning. The system must be delayed." The people behind David shifted restlessly. Someone checked their watch with exaggerated annoyance. The woman's hands trembled as she searched through her leather handbag, pulling out another card. Her face went pale. "I'm so sorry. I'll come back later." "That'll be $8.50, the cashier said kindly, letting the sentence hang as an offering rather than a demand. David's hand moved before his brain could stop it. He stepped forward, pulling out his last $10. "I've got it." The woman turned and their eyes met. Hers were a striking green, currently bright with unshed tears. For a moment, she looked at him with such intensity that David felt exposed, as if she could see every unpaid bill, every desperate prayer, every moment he'd pretended things were fine for Sophie's sake. "I couldn't possibly." "Please," David said gently. "We all have rough days. Someone helped me last month when I needed it." It was a lie. No one had helped him, but it felt important to let her believe the world was kinder than it actually was. She studied his face for a long moment, and something flickered in her expression. Recognition? Confusion? He couldn't tell. "Thank you," she whispered. "Truly. What's your name?" "David. David Torres." Her eyes widened just slightly. "David Torres. From Morrison Tech." His stomach dropped. How did she know? Yes, until recently." "I see." Her voice had changed, become softer somehow. "I'm Elena. Elena Morrison." The world tilted. Morrison. As in Morrison Tech. As in the company that had laid him off 3 weeks ago with a generic email and a severance package that barely covered 2 weeks of expenses. "I need to go," David said quickly, his face burning. He didn't want her pity. Didn't want to stand here while the owner's relative, daughter, wife, processed the fact that she'd just been rescued by one of the employees her company had discarded. "Wait," she started. But David was already moving toward the door. "Sir," the cashier called. "Your change. Keep it," David said over his shoulder, pushing out into the morning cold. He made it 3 blocks before the reality of what he'd done hit him. That was his last $10. The $10 that was supposed to buy bread and peanut butter to get Sophie through the weekend until his unemployment check came through. His phone buzzed. Another bill reminder. David silenced it and kept walking, his breath visible in the October air. His empty stomach a hollow reminder that sometimes kindness was a luxury he couldn't afford. What David didn't see was Elena Morrison standing frozen in that cafe, her untouched coffee growing cold in her hands, her mind racing through implications that made her want to scream. She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers and dialed. "Richard, it's Elena. I need you to pull the personnel file for David Torres immediately." "Yes, the one from the layoffs." "And Richard, I need to know everything, every email, every performance review, every reason he was selected for termination." Her voice dropped to something dangerous. "Do it now." Because the man who just gave me his last $10 to cover my coffee is the same man we let go 3 weeks ago. And something tells me there's a story here we need to understand. David made it home to find Sophie doing homework at their small kitchen table, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. At 9 years old, she took school seriously. Too seriously, David sometimes thought, but then again, she'd always been perceptive. She knew things were tight, even when he tried to hide it. "Hey, superstar," he said, forcing brightness into his voice. "How was school?" "Good. I got an A on my science project." She held up a paper with a red 100% at the top. "And guess what?" Mrs. Patterson said, "I can be on the science fair team." David's heart squeezed. The science fair required supplies, materials, things that cost money he didn't have. "That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." "It costs $20 to register," Sophie said, watching him carefully. "But it's okay if we can't do it this year." Mrs. Patterson said I could help the other kids instead. She'd already anticipated his answer, already prepared her disappointment, already learned to expect less. "We'll figure it out," David promised, the words tasting like ash. "I've got some job interviews coming up." Another lie. But what else could he say? "Sorry, honey. I gave away grocery money to a stranger who turned out to be related to the people who destroyed our lives." After Sophie went to bed, David sat at his laptop, bathed in the blue glow of job listings he was overqualified for and underqualified for in equal measure. Software engineer positions wanted skills he hadn't used since his first job. Entry-level positions didn't want someone with 15 years of experience who'd just take the first better offer. He was too experienced for the bottom, too expensive for the middle, and not connected enough for the top. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Probably another debt collector. He let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed again. Same number. And again. Annoyed, David answered. "Hello, Mr. Torres? This is Richard Chun from Morrison Tech HR. We need to speak with you urgently regarding your termination." David's blood ran cold. "If this is about the severance agreement, I signed everything." "No, sir. This is something else entirely. Ms. Morrison would like to meet with you tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. at the Morrison Tech headquarters. She's asked me to assure you this is not adversarial, quite the opposite." "And Mr. Torres?" Richard's voice softened. "Please come. I promise it will be worth your time." Morrison Tech's headquarters looked even more imposing than David remembered. Glass and steel, all sharp edges and cold ambition. He'd walked through these doors every day for 5 years, head down, doing his work, never making waves. He'd been good at his job. Great even. His code was clean, his projects delivered on time, his teammates respected him. When the layoff email came, he'd assumed it was purely about numbers. Budget cuts. Market conditions. The impersonal machinery of corporate America. Now, standing in the lobby at 8:55 a.m., David wondered if he'd been naive. Richard Chun met him at security, a slim man in his 40s with kind eyes and a careful handshake. "Mr. Torres, thank you for coming. Ms. Morrison is ready for you." They took the elevator to the top floor, executive territory David had never seen. Richard led him to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that probably cost more in rent than David's entire apartment. Elena Morrison stood with her back to him, shoulders rigid, staring out at the city. "Ms. Morrison, David Torres is here." She turned, and David was struck by how different she looked. In the cafe, she'd seemed vulnerable, almost fragile. Here, she was commanding not through aggression, but through absolute certainty of purpose. "Mr. Torres, thank you for coming." She gestured to a chair. "Please sit. Can we get you coffee? Breakfast?" "I'm fine," David said, though his empty stomach protested the lie. "I'll be direct," Elena said, sitting across from him. "I've spent the last 18 hours investigating your termination, and what I found has made me very, very angry." David blinked. "I don't understand." Do you know Peter Hoffman? My former manager? Yes. What I'm about to tell you is confidential, but you deserve to know. Elena pulled out a folder. Peter Hoffman was embezzling from Morrison Tech small amounts, clever schemes, almost undetectable. Almost. Our financial audit 3 weeks ago found discrepancies. Peter knew we were closing in. David's mind reeled. What does this have to do with? He needed a scapegoat. Someone whose termination wouldn't raise questions. Someone competent enough that losing them would hurt, but not visible enough that upper management would investigate deeply. Elena's jaw tightened. He chose you, David. He falsified performance reviews, created fake complaints from colleagues, built an entire narrative that you were underperforming. And in the chaos of the restructuring, it worked. You were cut. He stayed on, planning to flee once his final transactions cleared. The room spun. That's not possible. My reviews were always good. I never had complaints. I know. Elena opened the folder, revealing documents David had never seen. These are your real performance reviews. Excellent across the board. Commendations from teammates. A recommendation for promotion that somehow never reached the executive committee. She pulled out more papers. And these are the fabricated ones Peter created. Mediocre scores. Vague criticism. Just enough to justify your removal. David stared at the evidence of his own professional assassination, feeling sick. Where is Peter now? Police custody as of this morning. We found proof of the embezzlement and the falsified records. He's facing fraud charges, both for the theft and for deliberately destroying your career. Elena leaned forward, her green eyes intense. David, what Peter did to you is unconscionable. And worse, Morrison Tech let it happen. I let it happen. I should have been paying closer attention. I should have questioned more deeply. I failed you. You didn't know. I should have known. That's my job, to know. To protect people like you from people like Peter. She stood, pacing to the window. Yesterday in that cafe when you gave me your last money, and yes, I know it was your last money, I checked. I couldn't understand why. Why would someone who'd been so wronged by my company still choose kindness? David didn't have an answer. I started investigating because I needed to understand you, Elena continued. But what I found was a man who stayed late to help junior developers debug code, who mentored interns on his own time, who once gave his own bonus to a colleague going through cancer treatment. How did you? I talked to everyone who'd ever worked with you. They all said the same thing. David Torres is the kind of person who makes everyone around him better. She returned to her desk and pulled out a new folder. I can't give you back the 3 weeks of suffering. I can't erase what Peter did or my company's failure to protect you. But I can offer you this. Elena slid the folder across. Senior Engineering Director. 180,000 salary. Full benefits starting immediately. 60,000 signing bonus to address any financial hardship. Full autonomy over your projects. And David, her voice softened. A formal public apology from Morrison Tech for what was done to you. David stared at the contract, the numbers blurring. This is too much. It's not enough. You're worth twice this, but company policy limits how much I can authorize without board approval. Which I'm seeking, by the way. Elena sat down again. But David, I need you to understand something. This isn't charity. This isn't guilt. This is justice. And it's also selfish. Selfish. I've been running this company for 3 years since my father passed. I focused on growth, efficiency, profit margins. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what my father taught me. That a company is only as good as the people it protects and elevates. She met his eyes. You giving me that $10 yesterday, it wasn't about the money. It was about seeing another person struggle and responding with grace even when you had nothing to give. That's the kind of culture I want at Morrison Tech. And I can't build that culture without people like you. David's first day back at Morrison Tech felt surreal. The same building, but everything different. His new office had windows. His own windows. He stood there for 10 minutes just looking out at the city, remembering the cramped cubicle he'd occupied before. Quite a view, isn't it? He turned to find Elena in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. I thought you might need this. Thank you. David accepted the cup, then paused. You don't have to bring me coffee. I'm not. I know you're not. But I want to. Consider it my penance for every coffee I should have bought you in the last 3 weeks. She settled into one of his office chairs, looking oddly at home. How's Sophie? How do you know about Sophie? Your personnel file mentioned you were a single parent. I assumed. Elena smiled. Is she excited about the science fair? David blinked. I never mentioned the science fair. No, but I called her school yesterday. Asked what supplies she'd need. Spoke to Mrs. Patterson, who was thrilled to tell me all about Sophie's project on solar energy. Elena pulled out a receipt. I hope you don't mind, but I had everything delivered to your apartment this morning. Consider it a signing bonus for Sophie. David didn't know what to say. This woman, this wealthy executive he barely knew, had gone out of her way to ensure his daughter had what she needed. Why? He finally asked. Why are you doing all of this? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Do you know why my card declined yesterday? You said it was a system error. It wasn't. My accounts were frozen by the FBI. She saw his shocked expression and continued. Not because I did anything wrong, but because they're investigating Peter's embezzlement and needed to trace fund movements. They unfroze everything this morning, but yesterday, she shook her head. Yesterday, I stood in that cafe, unable to pay for a simple coffee, feeling absolutely powerless. And you, a man who had every reason to hate anyone connected to Morrison Tech, you helped me. It was just $10. It was everything. Elena's voice thickened. Do you know what it's like to run a company, to be responsible for thousands of employees, to make decisions that affect families and futures, and then suddenly be unable to pay for coffee? To feel invisible and small and helpless? David did know. He knew exactly. That moment taught me something, Elena continued. It taught me that we're all one bad day away from needing help. And that choosing to help, choosing kindness when it costs you something, that's the measure of a person. She stood, walking to the window. My father built Morrison Tech from nothing. He used to say that success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you do when you have the power to choose. He chose to help people. I lost sight of that. You reminded me. Over the following weeks, David fell into a rhythm. The work was challenging but rewarding. His team respected him. His projects actually mattered. But more than that, he noticed changes in the company culture. Elena instituted new policies. Mandatory background checks on all performance reviews, anonymous reporting systems for employees who felt targeted, and a second-look committee that examined every termination before it happened. The Peter Hoffman Memorial Accountability Standards. She called them at the company meeting, her voice dripping with irony. The room had laughed, but the message was clear. What happened to David would never happen again. David also noticed Elena herself changing. She started eating lunch in the cafeteria with employees. She held open office hours. She learned names. And somehow, in the course of working closely together on the new solar initiative project David was leading, they became friends. It started small, a shared joke about terrible code, a commiseration over difficult clients. Then longer conversations over working dinners, discussions that wandered from engineering challenges to life philosophies to personal histories. David learned that Elena had inherited Morrison Tech at 31 when her father died suddenly of a heart attack. That she'd been terrified and overwhelmed, thrust into leadership without training or preparation. That she'd coped by becoming ruthless about efficiency, cutting costs and streamlining operations because she didn't know what else to do. I was so focused on not failing him, she confessed one evening as they reviewed project timelines, that I forgot what he actually cared about, People. Elena learned that David's wife had left when Sophie was 2, unable to cope with motherhood. That David had raised their daughter alone, sacrificing career advancement to be present for her. That he'd chosen a stable but limiting position at Morrison Tech specifically because it had good hours and didn't require travel. I was so focused on not failing Sophie, he said, that I forgot I could want more for myself. And now, Elena asked, now I'm remembering. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Something neither quite named but both felt. Sophie's science fair project was, in David's admittedly biased opinion, brilliant. She designed a miniature solar panel system that could charge phones using nothing but sunlight captured through a dorm window. The materials cost less than $20. Sophie explained to the judges, her voice clear and confident, which means anyone could build one, even if they don't have much money. Clean energy shouldn't just be for rich people. David's chest swelled with pride. His 9-year-old daughter understood more about equity than most adults. That's a very mature perspective, one of the judges said. What made you think about accessibility? Sophie glanced back at David, then said simply, my dad taught me that the best inventions are the ones that help people who need it most. After the judging, while they waited for results, Elena appeared. David hadn't expected her, hadn't even mentioned the science fair. I hope it's okay that I came, she said, looking suddenly uncertain. Richard mentioned it was tonight, and I wanted to see Sophie's project. Ms. Morrison. Sophie's face lit up. Did you see my solar panel? Your company donated some of the materials. I did see it. And please call me Elena. Your dad's told me so much about you. Sophie looked between them with the too knowing expression of a child who understood more than adults wished. Are you my dad's boss? We work together, Elena said carefully. Do you like him? Sophie. David's face heated. What? It's a normal question. Sophie turned back to Elena. He talks about you all the time. Says you're really smart and funny and care about making things better. Sophie, that's enough. Does he? Elena's lips quirked. What else does he say? He says you remind him that he can be more than he thought he was, and that you make him want to be better. Sophie tilted her head. Is that what love is? The question hung in the air like smoke. Sweetheart, David said weakly. That's not. We're not. Love is complicated, Elena said gently to Sophie. But yes, I think part of love is making each other want to be better. Your dad makes me want to be better every day. Sophie nodded, satisfied. Good. He deserves someone who sees how special he is. Later, after Sophie won second place and they'd celebrated with ice cream, Elena walked them to David's car. I'm sorry about Sophie's questions, David said. She's very direct. She's honest. I like that. Elena paused, then added, and for what it's worth, she's not wrong. About how I feel. About you. Elena met his eyes. I know this is complicated. I'm your boss technically, and we have history that's messy at best. But David, somewhere between that cafe and tonight, watching you with your daughter, seeing the way you care about people, the way you build things that matter. She took a breath. I realized I'm falling for you. Have been falling for you, maybe since you gave me that $10. David's heart raced. I thought I was imagining it. The way you look at me sometimes. The way we talk about everything and nothing. I thought it was wishful thinking. It's not wishful thinking. Elena, you're brilliant and successful and beautiful. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone. I want the man who chose kindness when he had nothing. Who taught his daughter that the best inventions help people who need it most. Who makes me believe that success isn't about what you accumulate, but about who you become. She stepped closer. But I need you to know something. If this is too complicated, if you don't feel the same way, if the power dynamic makes you uncomfortable, I'll step back. I'll never mention it again. You'll still have your job, your projects, everything. I won't let my feelings jeopardize your career. Not after what you've already been through. David looked at her. Really looked at her. At the vulnerability in her eyes. The hope and fear warring on her face. This powerful woman making herself vulnerable for him. Sophie asked if love is about making each other better. He said quietly. I think she's right. And Elena, you've made me remember who I wanted to be before life beat it out of me. You've given me back my future. So yes, this is complicated. Yes, we'll have to navigate it carefully. But I'd be an idiot to walk away from something this real. He kissed her then, soft and sweet, while his daughter watched from the car with a triumphant grin. 6 months later, David stood before the board of Morrison Tech, presenting his proposal for the Community Innovation Fund. The premise is simple, he explained, pulling up his presentation. We identify talented people who lack resources, people passed over by traditional systems, single parents, people with employment gaps, those rebuilding after setbacks. We invest in their ideas, their potential, their futures. He clicked to the next slide showing projections. $5 million annually. Direct grants to individuals and small teams. No equity required. No strings attached. Just belief that potential exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. One board member frowned. What's our return on investment? Before David could answer, Elena spoke up. The return is living up to what this company should be. But if you need numbers, consider this. Every person we help becomes part of a network. They work with us, promote us, partner with us. They become our biggest advocates because we saw them when no one else did. She stood, walking to stand beside David. And more importantly, we're building a reputation as a company that values people over profit margins. In a world of corporate cynicism, that's worth more than any quarterly report. Another board member, an older woman named Margaret, smiled. I like it. It's bold, risky, exactly the kind of thing Walter Morrison would have done. It's also personal, Elena admitted. David's story taught me that our systems fail people daily. Good people, brilliant people, people who could change the world if someone just gave them a chance. She looked at David. This fund is how we become the chance givers instead of the chance takers. The vote was unanimous. After the meeting, David and Elena stood on the roof terrace, the same spot where David had his first meeting 6 months ago. We did it, David said, still somewhat stunned. You did it. I just backed your vision. Our vision, David corrected. I couldn't have pushed for this without you. Elena leaned against him, comfortable in a way that still surprised him sometimes. Do you ever think about that morning? In the cafe? Every day. Do you regret giving me that $10? David laughed. Elena, that $10 bought me a life I never imagined. Career I love. Work that matters. And, he turned to face her. You. It bought me you. I'm pretty sure I'm the one who won that transaction. Then we both won. They kissed as the sun set over the city. Two people who'd found each other at their lowest moments and built something beautiful from the wreckage. 1 year after that morning in Moonbeam Cafe, David and Elena hosted the first Community Innovation Fund award ceremony. 50 recipients, 50 stories of potential meeting opportunity. A single mother who'd invented a biodegradable plastic alternative. A formerly incarcerated man with a revolutionary literacy app. A disabled veteran whose accessible technology designs could change millions of lives. Each recipient received funding, mentorship, and something more precious, belief. During his speech, David shared his own story. The layoff, the struggle, the $10 bill. I gave away that money because I believed we're all connected. That helping someone else somehow helps ourselves. And I was right, just not in any way I could have imagined. He gestured to Elena. This program exists because two people met at the exact right moment of desperation and chose connection over isolation. Because Elena Morrison saw past titles and circumstances to who I actually was. Because we both learned that success isn't about never falling. It's about what you build while you're climbing back up. After the ceremony, Elena found David talking with a young woman named Maria who'd received funding for her community center project. She reminds me of someone, Elena said after Maria left. Yeah, me. Before I learned to see people. Elena took his hand. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for letting me. Sophie appeared, now 10 and impossibly grown up in her opinion. Dad, Elena, the photographer wants family photos. I'll get out of the way, Elena said, starting to step back. No. Sophie grabbed her hand. Your family. You're coming with us. David watched his daughter pull Elena into position beside him. Watched Elena's surprised, touched expression. Watched them both arrange themselves as if they'd always fit together this way. The photographer snapped the picture, capturing 3 people who'd found each other through circumstances that should have kept them apart. Later, much later, after Sophie was asleep and David and Elena sat on their apartment balcony watching the city lights, Elena pulled something from her pocket. A $10 bill. I've been carrying this for a year, she said. Every day. A reminder of the moment everything changed. You didn't have to keep it. Yes, I did. Because David, that morning taught me something I'd forgotten. That we measure our lives not by what we accumulate, but by what we give when we have nothing left to give. You gave everything that morning. And somehow it came back to you multiplied. She pressed the bill into his palm. But I think it's time this moved forward. Time someone else received grace when they need it most. David understood. The next morning, he walked into Moonbeam Cafe, the same cafe where it all began. The same barista, though her hair was purple now instead of blue. Hey, Mr. Torres. The usual? He ordered his coffee and Sophie's hot chocolate for later, paying with a 20. As he waited, he watched the line, looking for that familiar tension, that particular panic he'd recognized in Elena a year ago. A young man in a worn coat counted change with shaking hands, realizing he was short, his face flushed with embarrassment. David stepped forward and handed the barista his $10 bill. Whatever he's having, and keep the change. The young man looked at him with shocked gratitude. I can't let you. Someone did the same for me once, David said simply, and it changed my life. Maybe this will be the start of something for you, too. He left before the young man could argue, but glanced back to see him staring at the $10 bill like it was a miracle. Maybe it was. If stories like this still mean something to you, don't just scroll. Subscribe and stay for the next one. 5 years later, David and Elena stood in that same cafe for their wedding reception. They'd wanted something small, intimate, a place that meant something. The young man David had helped, now a thriving entrepreneur whose startup Morrison Tech had invested in, gave a toast. 5 years ago, David Torres bought me coffee when my card declined. I was jobless, homeless, and had just bombed an interview. I was ready to give up. But that small act of kindness gave me something to hold on to. A reminder that good people exist. That grace is real. He raised his glass. To David and Elena, who taught us all that the smallest acts of generosity create the biggest changes. And to $10 bills, may we all use ours wisely. The room laughed, clinked glasses, celebrated love born from hardship. Sophie, now 15 and already accepted to MIT's early admission program, stood to speak. My dad taught me that helping others isn't about having plenty. It's about recognizing shared humanity in shared struggle. Elena taught me that power isn't about standing above others, but lifting others up with you. She looked at them both with shining eyes. Together, they've taught me that the best love stories aren't about fairy tales. They're about 2 broken people choosing to build something whole. About finding your person in the exact moment you both need finding. About $10 that was never about money at all. Later, as David and Elena danced their first dance as husband and wife, he whispered, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd kept that $10? Elena smiled against his shoulder. Every day. And every day I'm grateful you didn't. Me too. Do you know what I love most about our story? What? That it's still being written. Every person we help, every life we change, every time we choose kindness, we're adding chapters. The story doesn't end with us. It ripples forward forever. David pulled back to look at her. This woman who'd seen him at his lowest and loved him at his highest, who'd turned a $10 transaction into a lifetime of grace. Forever, he agreed. One act of kindness at a time. And somewhere in that cafe, the manager reached for the envelope of $10 bills. Funded by Morrison Tech's community coffee program, Elena's quiet way of ensuring no one ever faced a declined card alone, and helped someone who'd reached the end of their rope. The ripple continued. The grace multiplied. The $10 that David Torres gave away returned to him 1,000-fold. Not in money, but in love, purpose, and the profound understanding that we save each other. That's what humans do. One coffee, one kindness, one love story at a time.